Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Health Recoded. I'm Alex, I'm your nurse, and today we're diving in deep into one hormone that affects nearly every system in the male body testosterone. Testosterone is often talked about as a sex hormone or a muscle hormone, but that framing is way too narrow. Testosterone is better understood as a full body regulator of vitality. It communicates with the brain, the muscles, bones, heart, all these systems in the body, and it influences energy, motivation, mood, strength, recovery, and how the body adapts over time. By the end of this episode, hopefully you'll understand more, not just about what testosterone is and what it does, but why it matters for everyday health, resilience, and long-term functioning in the male body. So, of note, females do have a small amount of testosterone in the body, but our necessary levels are much lower. So, normal levels in females run about 15 to 70 nanograms per deciliter, whereas for men it's roughly 300 to 1,000. And that's based on free T blood tests, and only 1 to 2% of testosterone is unbound or free. So, where does testosterone come from and how does it work? In the male body, testosterone is produced primarily in the testes, specifically by specialized cells called Leydig cells. And smaller amounts are also produced by the adrenal glands, which are the glands that sit on the top of the kidneys. And this is why females do have some amounts as well. Testosterone production is controlled by a communication loop between the brain and the body with the HPG axis. So I had previously said HPT in another episode, but I had the T confused for testes. It's G for gonads. So hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and then the gonads all communicate in this system. So the hypothalamus releases a signal that tells the pituitary gland to release luteinizing hormone, and that hormone then signals to the testes to produce testosterone, and then testosterone feeds information back to the brain so that production stays within a healthy range. This follows a daily rhythm. So with estrogen, we talked about how that was a 28-day cycle. Testosterone is a 24-hour cycle. So levels are the highest in the morning and then gradually decline throughout the day. And this rhythm matters because testosterone production is tightly linked to sleep, recovery, and nervous system regulation. Testosterone works by binding to androgen receptors, which you can think of as switches on cells throughout the body. So similar to estrogen receptors as we talked about in the estrogen episode. So when testosterone binds to these receptors, it tells cells how to grow, repair, respond to stress, use energy, and just function. These receptors are found in the brain and nervous system, skeletal muscle, bone tissue, fat tissue, reproductive organs, and then your cardiac system with your blood vessels and your heart. That widespread receptor presence explains why testosterone affects far more than just libido or muscle growth. So if we get into testosterone on the brain, in the brain, testosterone plays a key role in motivation, focus, confidence, and emotional resilience. So, this influences neurotransmitters like dopamine, which is involved with motivation, reward, and drive. Adequate testosterone supports goal directed behavior, mental clarity, and the ability to initiate and sustain effort. It also affects how neurons communicate with each other. So it supports the synaptic efficiency in the brain, meaning that the signals in the brain travel more smoothly. And this contributes to sharper thinking, better reaction time, improved cognitive stamina. And this is why men can often exemplify a singular focus. And they tend to make very excellent entrepreneurs, for example. So some sources will cite roughly 56% of males are 56% of entrepreneurs are male and 44 are female. Testosterone also plays a key role in libido on the brain. This influences motivation, reward, and sexual interest by interacting with those dopamine pathways. So it helps to regulate how strongly sexual cues are being perceived and how responsive the brain actually is to them. And when testosterone signaling is healthy, desire feels more spontaneous and resilient. But when it's disrupted, that desire can feel muted or inconsistent or like it's got a lot of effort. There's also a protective component. So testosterone supports cerebral blood flow and it helps reduce inflammation in neural tissue. This supports function in brain cells, which helps the brain produce energy more efficiently. So when testosterone levels drop, brain energy metabolism becomes less efficient. And this helps explain why low testosterone can actually feel like brain fog, low motivation, difficulty concentrating, or feeling just mentally flat. These symptoms are not psychological weakness, they're a neuroendocrine response. Okay? So basically, if you've got less of a level than what your body is needing, it's going to say, hey, I don't have what I need in order for this clarity and this singular focus in order to function. Moving on through to reproductive health, testosterone is best understood as a signal of readiness here. So, readiness to reproduce, to respond, or maintain reproductive tissue health over time. So, in the testes, testosterone supports sperm production by acting on the seminiferous tubules. Adequate testosterone is necessary for healthy sperm development, maturation, and then motility as well. So without sufficient signaling, sperm development becomes less efficient. So even if sperm are technically still being produced, this is why testosterone related fertility changes can occur really quietly and without obvious symptoms at first. Testosterone supports erectile function by influencing nitric oxide signaling, and this helps blood vessels to relax and to fill with blood. And this is not just about arousal, this is about vascular health. So, nerve signaling, tissue responsive, this is all working together in order for this to maintain its healthy level of functioning. So, reduced testosterone can make this process less efficient, even when blood flow and nerves are otherwise intact and functioning appropriately. What's important to understand is that the male reproductive system is highly sensitive to testosterone fluctuations because it's designed to respond quickly to the body's overall state. So, changes in libido, erectile quality, or fertility are often early signs that testosterone signaling is being deprioritized, not because something's broken, but because the body is adapting to poor sleep, or stress, or illness, or aging. So, in this way, reproductive changes are often messengers, not failures. Not because the system is broken, but because it's sensitive and it's responding and it's telling us something. So, if we move on through to bone health with testosterone, this plays a major role in maintaining bone density and strength. So, bone is constantly being remodeled through a balance of breakdown and rebuilding. We talked about this with the estrogen. Osteoblasts and osteoclasts are two different cells that are within the bone, and it helps to build and break down the bone. So testosterone supports bone formation directly, but also indirectly through its conversion into estrogen in bone tissue, which is critical for slowing down that bone breakdown. So again, we talked about that in the estrogen episode. When testosterone levels are adequate, bones respond well to mechanical stress like weight-bearing exercise, which we'll get into in a little bit. This helps maintain bone density and structural integrity over time. By increasing muscle mass and strength, testosterone indirectly puts beneficial load on the bones, and that therefore strengthens them because it's signaling to them to produce more vitamin D or more calcium, and that helps to rebuild the bones stronger. So when testosterone declines, bone remodeling shifts towards an increased breakdown. And then over time, that could increase to a risk of bone loss and then therefore fractures. So this is why resistance training and adequate nutrition are so important for long-term skeletal health in any body, but men and women, again, because women have levels of testosterone. Testosterone and cardiovascular health. Testosterone influences the heart in several important ways. So, it supports the red blood cell production, which helps oxygen circulate efficiently throughout the body. More red blood cells essentially means more oxygen in the blood, and this contributes to stamina, endurance, and overall energy levels. This also affects blood vessel function. So, healthy testosterone supports vascular flexibility and healthy the vessel endothelial function, which helps to regulate the pressure and the flow. So if we're keeping all of those vessels healthy and elastic and functioning, then they're actually able to maintain that flow and that pressure that they need at a good healthy baseline. So testosterone influences cholesterol metabolism as well. Balanced T levels are associated with healthier lipid profiles, while chronically low testosterone is often linked to increased visceral fat and unfavorable cholesterol changes. So again, we'll talk about this a little bit in the metabolism section in a second. But testosterone helps to reduce fat mass by improving overall lipid metabolism. So this shifts cholesterol towards use in testosterone production, which then promotes healthy cholesterol, or rather cholesterol removal, which then keeps it healthy. So TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy, can potentially alter these levels in the opposite direction. So it reduces the good HDL cholesterol and increases the bad LDL cholesterol. Testosterone has anti-inflammatory effects on vascular tissue, so it helps protect the inner lining of blood vessels, and all of these factors work to reduce inflammation and stress on the heart, which then results in a healthier cardiac profile. So when testosterone is low, cardiovascular strain can increase, and this is not an isolated issue, but it's part of a larger metabolic and inflammatory picture. So getting into testosterone in muscle, I don't think we're surprised here. This is one of testosterone's most well-known roles. So this supports muscle protein synthesis, which is the process by which muscle fibers repair and regenerate after exercise-induced damage. It enhances the body's ability to convert protein into new muscle tissue, which is a process vital for growth. And it also supports neuromuscular efficiency, just like we talked about in the brain, meaning muscles contract more efficiently and effectively because they're getting that neuromuscular connection more smoothly. So testosterone improves recovery by reducing muscle breakdown after exercise, and it supports that tissue repair. And this all enhances the body's response to resistance training. So in practical terms, healthy testosterone levels support strength, power, faster recovery between workouts, and better adaptation to training. When testosterone declines, muscle mass becomes harder to maintain, recovery slows down, and fatigue actually increases, even if the training volume has stayed the same. So this doesn't mean exercise stops working, it just means that recovery, sleep, and nutrition become that much more important to support the lack of the healthy T levels. So, testosterone and metabolism and fat distribution. So, testosterone plays a key role in metabolic regulation. It plays a central role in how the male body uses and stores and prioritizes energy. And it doesn't just affect weight in a cosmetic sense, it helps determine whether calories are directed toward muscle maintenance, energy production, or fat storage. So because T boosts muscle mass, this means that more calories can be burned because muscle typically uses more calories. We're going to talk about this in the muscular episode, okay? Muscle is not just for movement, it is metabolically active tissue, and it uses glucose or sugars and fatty acids all throughout the day. So testosterone supports muscle protein synthesis and helps preserve lean mass. So when muscle mass is maintained, the body has more tissue available to clear glucose from the blood and then use it to burn energy efficiently. This also helps to improve insulin sensitivity, particularly in muscle cells. This means glucose can move more easily from the bloodstream into the muscle to be used for energy instead of being stored as fat. And so when testosterone signaling is healthy, blood sugar regulation tends to be more stable and energy levels will feel more consistent. And so this also goes into play with the fatigue that we were talking about in the brain section. Testosterone also influences how fat cells behave and where fat is stored. Fat tissue is hormone responsive. Testosterone influences how fat cells grow, divide, and store energy. And in men, adequate testosterone helps limit the expansion of visceral fat, which is deep abdominal fat that surrounds organs. And visceral fat is not inert. It actively produces inflammatory signals and enzymes that can further suppress testosterone production, and so it creates this feedback loop. This is why typically when you see guys start injecting steroids, you'll notice a large reduction in weight. Increasing these T levels helps to regulate the fat accumulation and distribution on the body, and then also help the muscles function more effectively. So when testosterone levels decline, several shifts occur at once. Muscle mass becomes harder to maintain, which lowers overall metabolic demand. Insulin sensitivity may decrease, making blood sugar regulation less efficient. And then at the same time, fat storage can become more favorable in particularly the abdominal region. So, understanding this helps to reframe weight changes not as personal shortcomings, but as physiological shifts that require different strategies, support, and expectations in order to fix. So, then we're going to get into mood, stress, and emotional regulation with testosterone. So, mood is often where men feel testosterone shift the most. Testosterone plays an important role in how the male nervous system responds to stress and regulates emotion. It's not about creating constant confidence or dominance. It's about helping the brain stay resilient under pressure. So in the brain, testosterone interacts with neurotransmitter systems, like we talked about, that are involved in motivation, reward, and emotional regulation, particularly with dopamine. So, adequate testosterone signaling supports initiative, confidence, and emotional steadiness by helping the brain interpret challenges as manageable rather than overwhelming. Testosterone also helps modulate the stress response by interacting with cortisol, which we talked about as the stress hormone. So, chronic stress raises cortisol, and elevated cortisol directly suppresses testosterone production. So, under normal conditions, these two hormones actually balance each other. Cortisol rises in response to stress to mobilize energy, while testosterone supports recovery, motivation, and forward directed behavior once that stress has passed. So, when stress becomes chronic, cortisol stays elevated longer than it should, and elevated cortisol directly suppresses testosterone production at multiple levels. So it reduces signaling from the brain to the gonads or the testes and shifts the body's priorities away from reproduction and muscle maintenance and towards survival. Over time, this creates a feedback loop where high stress lowers testosterone, and lower testosterone creates more stress. When testosterone is low, mood changes don't always look like sadness. Instead, they often present as irritability or reduced motivation, decreased confidence, or a sense of mental fatigue or brain fog. And some men describe feeling less driven or less like themselves, even if they can't identify a clear stressor or emotional issue. From a nursing perspective, these changes are often signals of adaptive responses to chronic stress, not personality changes. So, if we get into testosterone and longevity, and then we'll start talking about how to support healthy levels of testosterone in your body, okay? So, testosterone contributes to long term health by supporting muscle mass, metabolic health, bone density, cardiovascular function, and then your cognitive resilience as well. And at the cellular level, testosterone supports mitochondrial efficiency and reduces chronic inflammation. So essentially, it's supporting cell health and reducing inflammation of those. These effects help slow processes that contribute to aging and chronic disease. So it doesn't prevent aging, it just supports the body's ability to adapt, recover, and maintain function over time. When testosterone declines, lifestyle factors like resistance training, sleep, nutrition, stress management, all these things we always talk about, become even more powerful tools for preserving your health and your longevity. So, putting this all together, testosterone is far more than a sex hormone. It's a system wide regulator affecting all bodily systems. Understanding testosterone helps explain why changes in your sleep, your stress, your illness can feel so impactful, and why addressing the whole system matters. So, supporting healthy testosterone signaling without chasing it. When we talk about supporting T in the body, it's important to shift away from the idea of boosting levels. Testosterone doesn't exist in isolation. It reflects how safe, nourished, and recovered the body feels. The goal isn't to force testosterone higher, it's to create conditions where the body doesn't feel the need to suppress it. So, some of these are going to sound familiar because we've talked about them before. Sleep is one of the strongest regulators of testosterone production. Most testosterone is released during deep sleep, particularly in the early part of the night. So, shortened sleep, irregular schedules, fragmented sleep, these can all directly reduce testosterone signaling, even in young, healthy men. Energy availability matters. So, chronic undereating, aggressive dieting, or long periods of caloric restriction, these can signal to the body that resources are scarce. And in response, the body can reduce reproductive hormone signaling, including testosterone, in order to conserve energy. So, basically, the body's saying, hey, I don't have enough energy. I'm not going to reproduce because I can't even take care of the thing that we create after the fact because I'm doing so much to take care of myself. So, supporting our rest in that is going to help ideally support the testosterone levels as well. Resistance training. This supports testosterone, but only when paired with adequate recovery. So we don't want to run ourselves into the ground with weight training or running or whatever we choose to go do because if we don't have adequate recovery, then the T productions can't maintain. So, heavy training is a stressor. When training volume exceeds recovery capacity, cortisol remains elevated and testosterone signaling can decline, as we talked about with that feedback loop. Progress happens during recovery, not during the workout itself, which is kind of counterintuitive. But making sure that we are recovering from that stress and that stimulus is going to help make sure that we can then go do it again. So it is definitely very cyclical. We want to go exercise so that we can allow T to function and do what it does. But again, we want to recover so that it can recover and then do it all over again. Stress regulation is also another one. This is not optional. Chronic psychological stress keeps cortisol elevated, which suppresses testosterone production at multiple points along the brain. Supporting the nervous system regulation through rest, therapy if that works for you, meditation, recovery, this is all part of hormonal health and it's not a luxury for men or for women. Nutrition also plays a structural role. Testosterone synthesis requires cholesterol, healthy fats, and micronutrients like zinc and magnesium. This doesn't mean supplements are required, but it does mean overly restrictive or fat avoidant diets can impair hormone signaling over time. So, from a nursing perspective, declining testosterone is often a signal, not a defect. It reflects cumulative stress, sleep disruption, illness, and aging. Supporting testosterone means supporting the whole system, not micromanaging a single hormone or chasing perfect numbers. So, my key takeaways for you: testosterone binds to receptors throughout the body, and it influences all the bodily systems, and it can influence your energy, your recovery, your repair, and your resilience. Healthy testosterone supports strength, mood, motivation, metabolic health, and aging. Low testosterone is often a signal of stress, poor sleep, inflammation, or under recovery. And supporting testosterone means supporting the nervous system, the recovery, and overall health environment for our body. If today's episode helped you understand more about testosterone in a full body context, please share it with somebody who might benefit. Please like and subscribe or send any questions or comments you may have my way. I'll see you guys next week for our next topic. And as always, thank you for listening.